During her trip last week, the Congresswoman and business leaders from Plattsburgh met with executives from Bombardier. Sales of their business jet are taking off, and the company's hiring about 1,000 new workers in Quebec. They're hoping to get the company to think of Plattsburgh if it looks at more expansion in the future. With the railcar plant here, could there be other incentives for Bombardier to look here as far as aerospace, to the transportation and aerospace hub that's growing in Plattsburgh?
The one area where I can see that becoming significant is if there are U.S. content requirements that need to be met. So you could do some portion of the aircraft here in Plattsburgh, and I don't mean of the fuselage. I'm talking about various parts that would go into it, aeronautics, that type of thing. You could do that manufacturing here, much like Norsk is planning to do, and then incorporate those into the aircraft, which would help them meet Made in America requirements if those became part of the trade process.
Which their rail cars already have to do.
Which their rail cars already have to do.
Some of the business leaders in Quebec who met with the Congresswoman last week also raised questions about tax reform and the effect it could have on cross-border business. Companies would most certainly like to see a lower corporate tax rate, down to 20%, but are there drawbacks to the tax reform plans that we see in the House and Senate?
Well, one of the concerns that Canadians have is that they lowered their tax rate during the Harper administration rather significantly, which made them more competitive. If we lower our rates, that takes away one of those competitive advantages. And I think that that's one of the areas of concern. Now, some Canadian businesses will clearly want to see a change in U.S. tax rates so that that affects them directly. But on a more global basis, the concern is that's been one of Canada's truly great advantages in recent years, and we could upset that particular advantage.
Is the tax overhaul something that's long overdue?
Clearly it is. I think simplification of the code would make a great deal of sense. My apologies to my accountant friends. But I think that what's happening now is not really simplification. It's simply just cutting taxes for corporations and to some extent for the rest of the population. But there was a piece that I read this morning that sort of summarized this, and people below $75,000 over the duration of this bill would actually pay higher taxes. And so that's a significant issue.
Do you buy into the thought that giving businesses the tax break will help stimulate economic growth?
There's been no history of that. In fact, Gary Cohen gave a speech within the last couple of weeks in which he asked a couple of hundred business executives if they plan to hire more people or invest more, and a very few hands were raised. That tells you, I think, that there's little stomach in the large corporation environment to really push those benefits down to, if you will, the public.